Discover the amazing recipe by a single dad chef that transformed a crying baby and left a billion hearts warmed. The clock struck 2, and the diner buzzed with the kind of chatter that wrapped around Jake Turner like the familiar scent of bacon and pancakes. Yet, amidst the clinking dishes and cascade of laughter, his mind swirled with anxiety, racing through the layers of his double life. By day, he filled plates with comfort. By night, he stood as a desperate father, unsure how to bridge the gap between tin plates of meatloaf and the wails of his colicky newborn, Lily. Each cry sliced through him, an aching reminder of what it meant to be inadequate. Jake's hands trembled as he plated another order of chicken fried steak. Should he be here, stirring gravy while his daughter cried? As the waitress shouted, "Order up," he hesitated, contemplating the weight of his choices. Diner regulars would often remark that Jake had culinary talent. What would they think of a dad who couldn't soothe his own child? Every evening, it felt as if he was juggling too many flaming torches. Lily's cries echoed through his mind as images of his late grandmother flickered in the dark, her skillful hands crafting the very dishes he prepared now. But cooking wasn't just a job to Jake, it was a legacy, and here he was, undervaluing the roots from which he came. The hustle was constant, but the nights were isolating. The agony of being both a father and a chef weighed heavier than any skillet he could lift. Suddenly, amid the chaos, Jake's eyes landed on an old recipe card tucked beneath a pile of bills. Its edges were worn, the handwriting unmistakably his grandmother's. Generations of family history danced before him. He could recall the warmth of her laughter and the taste of her famous chicken soup, a remedy for everything in his childhood. The idea sparked a flicker of hope, but doubt clawed at him. Did he still have it in him? Could he really summon the magic of her recipe and blend it with the love he felt for his daughter? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's heart drummed in his chest as he prepared to dive into the dish steeped in memory. Would this be the answer? Would the aroma that filled the air lull Lily into a peaceful sleep? Desperation washed over him. Each stirring motion held the weight of his ambition. If he could connect the dots between culinary art and the love for his daughter, it might just transform everything for both of them. But as the soup simmered, Jake couldn't shake off the doubt creeping in. What if this wasn't enough? What if the very recipe that had been his grandmother's secret wouldn't resonate in the same way anymore? Anxiety tightened his gut as he heard Lily's wails grow louder, as if echoing his greatest fears. In that pivotal moment, time suspended, revealing a crossroads where no clear path existed, only uncertainty and overwhelming pressure. Could he find a way to balance the culinary dreams slipping away with his overwhelming responsibilities as a single father? Would he even be able to bring solace to Lily, the one he loved more than anything? Jake clenched his fists and looked out the window at the darkening sky, each passing moment feeling like a countdown to something monumental. He had to face his doubts. He had to redefine success not just as a chef but as a father. But the doubt still lingered, reminding him that tomorrow could bring yet another sleepless night. He stood frozen, breath hitched, battling the weight of his decision, staring down the very recipe that could change their lives forever. The simmering pot of chicken soup bubbled gently, as if echoing the turmoil in Jake's chest. A blend of rich aromas wafted into the air, cautiously weaving its way through the diner, but he struggled to relish it. The weight of nostalgia threatened to drown him, yet it also ignited a spark of determination. He dipped a spoon into the broth, letting the heat wrap around him, a momentary embrace from the memory-filled vessel. Lily's howls grew more frantic. Each shriek pierced through the aromas as if the kitchen was mocking him with comforting scents while he was still shackled by chaos. Would he ever find the balance between these worlds? Pressure thumped at the back of his mind. Restaurant patrons awaited their meals, yet all he could think about was the fragile little being who relied on him for everything. How can I turn this into something special for her? Jake whispered to himself, stirring against the doubt that simmered alongside the soup. His grandmother's card glared up at him, words hand-scribed with love. He felt an undeniable urge to breathe life into her tradition, to carve a new path for his daughter. But every attempt to summon that love brought with it an unsettling revelation. His grandmother's art was not merely a skill but a connection to family and safety that he had feared was lost. As the soup thickened, he began to delineate his gaps not only in culinary finesse but in emotional vulnerability. He hadn't just inherited recipes, he had inherited a lineage of resilience, love, and heartache, all interlaced within his cooking, yet, amid these revelations danced the shadows of self-doubt. A familiar voice laced with sarcasm echoed from the back of his mind. You fell short the moment you signed up for fatherhood. It was a cruel reminder of abandonment that haunted him since Lily's arrival. How could he conquer the culinary arts when he barely managed to soothe his own flesh and blood? Jake clenched the wooden spoon as he stared into the depths of the bubbling soup, envisioning the ingredients spinning around like a whirlwind, a flurry of possibilities and fears. He had always seen cooking as his sanctuary and talent. Perhaps it could also be a bridge to reconnect with his daughter. If he could recreate the heartwarming soup, layering every ounce of emotion into it, maybe he could inspire comfort in her as his grandmother once had on him. Okay, you can do this, he murmured, his brow furrowing with resolve. The challenges came cascading down like flurries, but a decision crystallized in his mind. He would not only cook for Lily, he would let each ingredient speak the language of love, healing, and family. That he added the chopped carrots, potatoes, and onions, visualizing each piece as a reminder of the days gone by with his grandmother. As he stirred, he thought of her wisdom: create with your heart, and the rest will follow. Perhaps this was what he lacked all along, the courage to open his heart to the act of creation. The bell above the diner door chimed, breaking his focus, but Jake didn't flinch. Instead, a realization sparked within him. He recognized that if he poured his heart into that pot, every moment of vulnerability could resonate as music in the air. For the first time, he began to embrace the possibility that building these connections with Lily didn't have to be perfect, they merely had to be genuine. Confidence flickered in his veins as he poured a hand of salt into the brew, standing a bit taller as he felt the strides of personal evolution. He carved out a plan, mapping out the next steps, not just in the kitchen but as a father. What if this dish could become a token of their intertwined futures? What if the creation sparked conversations and laughter, slowly stitching their hearts together? Just then, the diner door swung again, and in walked a familiar face from his past, a woman sharply dressed, with an opinionated tone that had once filled his thoughts with self-doubt. She approached the counter, scanning the menu with discerning eyes, and suddenly Jake sensed the stakes raise anew. The time had come not only to face his culinary destiny but to confront the very shadows of judgment that had haunted him since his departure from the world he used to know. Would he crumble under her gaze or demonstrate the strength of his growth? Jake forced his gaze from the simmering pot as the woman approached. It wasn't just the pressure of her presence that undid him, it was a whole constellation of past discomforts that flickered back to life. Emily heralded memories of his former life, one drenched in self-doubt and insecurity. She had once been a beacon of overwhelming expectations, her critiques often leaving him paralyzed, second-guessing every culinary decision. Nice to see you again, Jake, she said, an unsettling familiarity weaving through her casual tone. Been a while since you've graced the culinary scene. Her eyes darted around the diner, assessing it with an expert's precision. Competing frequencies of pride and vulnerability clashed within him, disorienting him. Yeah, he replied, trying to maintain a facade of calm. I'm still working on things. Working? Your grandmother's chicken soup, I see. Classic choice. Her comment came with a hint of challenge. His stomach nodded at the unspoken expectation that this dish encapsulated not just memories but a metric of his growth or lack thereof. Jake swallowed hard. She'd never admit it, but her opinion had once felt like a harbinger of his worth. This moment loomed before him, twisting like an escape route, and he needed to choose what direction to take. Did he really want to collapse under her scrutiny once more? Leaning against the counter, he considered his options. Yeah, trying to bring back some family traditions. Trying to adapt them for a new generation. He let the words fall, each one steeped in both conviction and uncertainty. Her patronizing smile flickered briefly before fading. Is that right? And how are those traditions working for you, really? I mean, a diner isn't quite the restaurant scene you once aspired to. She remained poised, moments of competitive tension tangling in the air. That moment, the simmering soup seemed to bubble louder, accentuating the silence that hung between them. Jake clenched his fists, forcing himself to tap into the resolve that had sparked within him earlier. This wasn't just about culinary skills, this was personal. He had taken the first steps toward rediscovering himself as a father and as a chef, and he wasn't about to backtrack now. It's not about the scene, Emily, he found his voice, stronger than he'd anticipated. It's about connection. What I make here, he nodded toward the pot, isn't just food, it's history. It's the stories of my grandmother. It's who I want to be for my daughter. It's real. Each word resonated like a chime of clarity, lifting him above the noise of her judgment. She shifted in her stance, a slight crease forming on her brow, perhaps for the first time questioning the narrative she had once believed. And what about your future? Don't you think you should aim higher? Who says this isn't high enough? Jake countered, the pulse of adrenaline flowing through him. I don't need to impress anyone. The only person I need to impress is Lily. If I can serve her a bowl of soup that brings her comfort, then I've already won. The warmth enveloping him was more than just the steam from the pot. It was a realization that he was now the author of his own journey, not a mere character in someone else's story. Emily's expression transformed, an unexpected flicker of respect mixed with disbelief. Is that enough for you? What if it is? He shot back, emboldened by the clarity of his intentions. Underneath the questioning tones, Jake sensed vulnerability. Perhaps she expected him to crumble, but resilience tinged his words now. He wasn't interested in the artifice of success she projected onto others. As he turned back to his soup, stirring with intention, a surge of confidence settled in his bones. He was on a path of his own, where culinary success meant reconnecting with his daughter and embracing both the past and present. Just then, the diner's door swung open again, and a loud crash echoed from the kitchen as something toppled over. Instinctively, Jake's heart raced, for he saw this as more than a simple accident. It was yet another test. Would he break under pressure, or could he rise yet again, proving to both himself and Lily that he had truly taken control of his life? The sound reverberated, signaling the next challenge he would need to tackle. Would he step up and manage this, or would he be overwhelmed? The true test awaited. Jake's eyes darted toward the kitchen door, a chill tracing the back of his neck as he weighed his options. A crash meant chaos, and chaos was familiar, yet he now faced it differently. Instead of crumbling or fleeing, he felt an urgency nudging him toward action. Growing pains, he reminded himself, the sound of something breaking, like his past, which he was determined to mend. Annie! He shouted, his voice cutting through the din of the diner. It belonged to his new sous chef, a passionate culinary student who had jumped at the chance to work alongside him. He could trust her to handle the immediate situation and not succumb to the distractions that had once led Jake off course. On it! She shouted back, then deftly sprinted toward the kitchen's fracas. For the moment, Jake returned to the simmering pot, every bubbling bubble a reminder of his dedication to Lily, to the legacy of his grandmother. His hands moved automatically, stirring the soup with a meticulous rhythm, but internally, he wrestled with emerging doubts. Was staying at the diner truly enough? He had always associated prestige with culinary success, and part of him, the insecure part, still craved validation. But that craving felt muted now, overshadowed by the deeper need to be present for his daughter. As if sensing his turmoil, Emily moved closer again, her tone softer. Is it just that simple for you? Being here? I've learned that simple can be profound, Jake replied without looking up, his mind concentrating on creating a broth that encapsulated warmth, a taste of home that he longed to provide for Lily. Diners are where real connections happen, where people share stories. I'm not just making food, I'm crafting comfort. His words hung between them, a tangible bridge he had architected in defiance of the expectations he had once wielded in Emily's presence. Just as he sensed a wavering of her judgment, a cacophony erupted again from the depths of the kitchen. Jake! Annie's urgent voice pierced his concentration, snapping him from his thoughts. I need your help here. With purpose, he wiped his hands on his apron, straightening his back. The call to support his team was a new responsibility he was ready to embrace. As he moved toward the kitchen, something shifted in him, a realization that redefining success meant not just striving for accolades but also uplifting those around him. Entering the heart of chaos, he took in the scene. Pots lay scattered on the floor, flour dust hung in the air like a ghost of their mishap. What happened? Jake began to assess the situation, instinctively taking charge as he had done in the past, but now with a focus on collaboration. Just a little mix-up with the flour and the sugar. It's fine, I'm fine. Annie stammered, red-faced but resolute. Jake chuckled, the tension dissipating slightly. Let us turn this mess into something. Can we save the dough? He felt alive, invigorated by the challenge rather than hampered by the pressure. Let us try. Together, they worked methodically. Jake's heart raced not with anxiety but with purpose, rediscovering a rhythm he had long craved. For each moment they spent fixing the misstep, he found himself smiling more, pushing through the adversity, seeing the beauty in their collaboration. As they shaped the dough, the kitchen buzzed with renewed energy, laughter intermingling with the clattering of utensils. Emily lingered in the doorway, perhaps surprised by this side of Jake, the one who not only embraced failure but turned it into an opportunity for growth. Just as they finished, a familiar cry cut through the evening air, a baby's wail, sharp and piercing. That's Lily, Jake said, momentarily frozen, a surge of protective instinct rushing through him. She needs me. Without a second thought, he rushed to the front as instinct kicked in. Where was the line between his culinary ambitions and his responsibilities as a father? What lay ahead as he navigated both worlds? The answer loomed ahead, teasing the edges of commitment he was finally ready to explore. Would he find balance, or would life's demands fracture the careful foundation he was beginning to build? As Jake pushed through the diner's door, the rich, greasy smell of fried food combined with the sweetness of caramelized onions created a sensory backdrop that had long been his solace. Yet today, it only heightened his awareness of the turmoil flipping through his mind. He could hear Lily crying, her voice a bell tolling for him, snapping him into the now as urgency pulled him toward her. Hey there, sweet girl, he soothed, scooping her up just as Emily followed him to the front. What's the matter? He cradled her, feeling warmth seep into him. Her little fists clenched and unclenched, her tiny features scrunched in distress. A smile broke through her tears but dimmed quickly. It wasn't he enough. Emily raised an eyebrow at Jake, lingering in the doorway, a silent question hanging in the air. He shifted Lily in his arms, wrestling against feelings of inadequacy, struggling with the dual responsibility looming over him. Why was he so afraid of failing at one front when he was thriving at another? Have you fed her? Emily asked gently. A rush of embarrassment coursed through him. I am not sure I have the time right now. I thought it's okay. Emily's voice was calm, steady. You can't pour from an empty cup, Jake. Let me help you. And no, I can handle it, he stammered defensively, even as cracks of doubt splintered his resolve. He could feel the walls he'd built around himself beginning to waver. A priority had to be established, but he wasn't ready to concede that he could use help. The years of self-reliance echoed in his mind. Accepting assistance threatened to fragment his carefully crafted identity. Becoming a father while clinging to his past as a chef felt paradoxical, a tightrope overhead. Sensing his hesitation, Emily stepped closer, her gaze searching. I know you want to do this on your own, but being a single parent is exhausting. You're one person. Let me lend a hand with her while you get back to the kitchen. Jake considered her words. They hung heavy in the air, begging for recognition. It felt almost scandalous allowing someone else into his bubble. But standing there with Lily howling in his grasp, he was reminded of that chaotic scene only moments ago in the kitchen. He had begun to learn the value of teamwork, of collaboration. So why did asking for support in his personal life fill him with dread? With a deep breath, he lent her a fleeting look, vulnerability vying for dominance. Okay, maybe a little help wouldn't hurt. He reluctantly handed Lily over. As Emily bounced her gently and murmured soft words that soothed the baby's cries, Jake felt a surge of appreciation washing over him. Thank you, he whispered, astonished at the emotion swelling within him. It was a realization that opened new pathways for growth, that he could intertwine his role as a chef with his responsibilities as a father, sharing the load without diminishing his identity. After checking that Lily was comforted, he returned to the kitchen. The rhythm welcomed him back, familiar and safe, but the moment he stepped into that chaos, something different ignited within him. The combination of responsibility and support wouldn't fracture him but could forge a new alignment in his life. All right, team, Jake announced, drawing attention as he surveyed the bustling space. What's next? Annie and the other staff returned his stares with intrigued grins. What's that? Annie asked, mischief dancing in her eyes. You finally asking for help? More like getting organized with it, Jake smirked, invigorated. Let us make today's service a showcase of not just individual talents but the strength of our collaboration. As he pressed forward, he grappled with the underlying currents that danced between fatherhood, creativity, and culinary ambitions. Could he evolve without sacrificing either part of himself? The potential delighted and terrified him simultaneously. The evening rushed on, laughter punctuating the chatter as orders flew. Still, Jake's mind lingered on Lily, on the blend of two worlds that he had just begun to navigate. He felt the weight of responsibility. And for the first time, the lightness of relief mingled with it, but just when clarity dawned, a sudden commotion from the diner area sent Jake into a spiral, pulling his focus away from the newly forged path he was treading. What could go wrong next? The barometer of chaos loomed steady over his ambitions, ready to test his newfound balance. What fresh reality was unraveling just outside the kitchen door? The alarming noise crescendoed, sharp and punctuated with frantic voices. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him, as the warmth of his earlier revelations faded into a chilling uncertainty. With a final glance toward the busy kitchen, he forced himself into the chaotic diner area, propelled by a mix of dread and determination. What he found was unexpected. A toddler had toppled over a tray of milkshakes, the sticky concoction pooling on the floor, splashed across unsuspecting diners and adding to the hilarity of the mess. But right next to the chaos, a woman was shouting, her voice clawing through the humor. A young girl was wailing as the milkshake dripped down her beloved doll, now a sad casualty of mishap. Jake's heart raced. Hey! Everyone okay? He called out, muscles taut as he stepped into the fray, instinctively taking charge. The woman turned to him, a look of panic more than anger in her eyes. Her words tumbled out. My daughter, her doll. It's ruined. I can't let us fix this, Jake interjected, his voice steadying the atmosphere. Without hesitating, he stepped forward and crouched near the girl. Hey there, sweetheart. You're going to get your doll looking brand new again. Trust me. He quickly glanced around for help. Annie, can you grab some wet paper towels? We'll clean up this mess. The young waitress was quick to respond, her eyes wide, but energy buzzing. Jake felt an anchor tether him to this moment. Recognizing the urgency, he rallied the staff more effortlessly now. Each order of motion felt like a step toward integrating his fatherly instincts with his culinary talents. All right, here's the plan, Jake said, rising back to his feet, the weight of his newfound duality feeling a little lighter. While we clean, I'll whip up something special to cheer her up. Who wants to help? The staff murmured agreement, excitement igniting the air. They grabbed ingredients with a focus that was new for Jake. As they transformed frenzied chaos into operatic motion, he inserted himself into the creative rhythm, hands moving almost instinctively, employing countless techniques cultivated through years of experience. He felt the familiar adrenaline rush bolster his resolve. He decided on small, colorful cupcakes, vibrant enough to divert the child's attention from her doll. Each whisk and sprinkle felt therapeutic, a battle against uncertainty alongside the fortifying scent of frosting gradually filling the air. Here, surrounded by clarity and purpose, he discovered the balance he sought between father and chef. Hey, you! He said, directing his attention back to the girl. What's your favorite color? Purple. She squeaked through her sobs, her eyes now curious rather than forlorn. Perfect. He exclaimed, pouring purple batter into the cupcake molds, vibrant and inviting. Now we can make them together. How about we add some extra sprinkles? In that moment, the girl's gaze ignited with awe, and Jake realized something extraordinary. He was building a connection not only with her but with himself. He could merge these fragments of his life, still retaining their integrity. The revelation tightened his resolve, an unexpected epiphany woven through the laughter that began to ripple around the diner. Emily re-entered, Lily in her arms, balancing the diaper bag on her hip. She caught sight of the scene playing out before her: culinary camaraderie, laughter, and shared purpose. Jake's eyes met hers. They exchanged subtle acknowledgement. He understood now. Vulnerability could be a strength. The klutzy crisis had transformed into an impromptu party, and as the cheerful chaos settled, Jake realized he was ready to embrace more of this balance. But then, as the accolades poured towards him from the beaming faces of patrons, a sharp chill wrapped around him, a realization that chaos wasn't just outside the kitchen. It waited to spiral into other aspects of his life. Was he really prepared for the next wave of inevitable upheaval? Yet the thought slipped away quickly, drowned out by a cheering crowd eager for his cupcakes. But he couldn't shake the lingering question. What would his next challenge reveal about his capacity to weave these threads into a satisfying, fulfilling existence? As the cheers swelled, Jake sensed the winds of change approaching. Would he be ready to face another unraveling moment? The afterglow of applause lingered in the diner, but beneath Jake's practiced smile, a storm of apprehension brewed. He reveled in the moment, having redirected chaos into joy. He felt a surge of accomplishment. Yet, a gnawing doubt crept in, simmering beneath the surface. Would this newfound equilibrium endure when things spiraled again? What lay beneath his surface mastery in the kitchen that he had yet to confront? Annie sidled up to him as patrons continued savoring their cupcakes, her youthful energy vibrant against the fading chaos. "You handled that like a pro, Jake," she gushed, fresh from clearing tables, her hands still smeared with frosting. "Seriously, it was amazing." "Thanks, Annie," he replied, forcing a smile despite the weight pressing on his chest. "It was just a momentary fix, you know." She tilted her head, inquisitive. "But it worked. You made it work." "I wish I had that kind of confidence." Jake looked away, considering his own insecurities. Confidence felt fragile, easily shaken by unforeseen circumstances. He had survived this particular upheaval, but would he continue to thrive amidst the onslaught? The diner gradually emptied, leaving behind the remnants of a mini-festival of sweets. As the last patrons filed out, he glanced over to where Emily was picking up napkins, her face radiating pride despite the disarray. The momentary wonder he felt earlier swelled within him, tinged with a mess of emotion. One moment a father, the next a chef, and both identities intertwined. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, approaching with purpose. The earnest expression on her face dissipated his light-hearted facade, replacing it with looming anxiety. "I've been thinking about your balance." "Balance?" he echoed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Wild chaos is part of parenthood, you know. You can't just juggle your new role as a dad and your work, you'll burn out." "I see that you're really trying." A mix of irritation and realization clawed at him. Hadn't he just proven his ability to create the balance, to forge something light from the dregs of turmoil? "You think I'm not doing it right?" "No," she countered, her eyes softening, "I think you're doing it the best you can. But you should consider getting help really mastering both worlds instead of just managing the chaos. Maybe take a few parenting classes or workshop." An uncertain frown slipped onto his face as he contemplated her words. He had always relied on fierce independence, the feeling that leaning on others meant he wasn't strong enough to hold his own. Yet, he felt acutely aware that achieving true balance might require more vulnerability than he was used to accepting. "What if I fail those classes?" he retorted, the fear bubbling to the surface. "To share my parenting insecurities? What if they don't think I'm enough?" Emily folded her arms, matching his intensity. "But you're doing it right here, right now. You're connecting and learning, not just with your daughter but also with yourself. What is there to lose?" Jake studied her, torn between the urge for self-sufficiency and her unwavering belief in him. Perhaps vulnerability didn't equate to weakness? Perhaps it could be the pill needed to transform moments of panic into growth. As he weighed her words, the clamor of the diner slowly quieted, a metaphorical echo of his internal struggle. He returned to the vibrant scenes from earlier, the icing, laughter, and passion blending like ingredients in his kitchen. The simple truth emerged: part of embracing the chef and father within him was accepting the complexities that came with them. Maybe you're right, he finally said, a newfound determination flickering within. Maybe I do need to give that a shot. Just then, the front door swung open, and a familiar face stepped in, the diner's longtime critic, Greg, his typical sneer replaced by an unexpected expression of intrigue. Jake's pulse quickened. This was his moment, a chance to prove beyond accolades from the crowd that he truly had transformed. Jake walked toward him, heart racing. What awaited him now would wrestle with his confidence, tipping him further into the essence of his journey. Would he accept the challenge? Would he introspectively push past the chaos again, forging a more resilient self? Jake, Greg began, his tone serious, we need to discuss your next menu. I have some expectations. With those words looming ominously in the air, Jake's resolve trembled. The end of one set of challenges was only the beginning of another. Jake's heart hammered as Greg's words hung in the thick air of the diner. It was one thing to have the crowd's applause reverberating off the walls, but this, the critical gaze of Greg, felt like a furnace of scrutiny. All at once, the earlier warmth of accomplishment had cooled into the chill of uncertainty. Expectations? Jake asked, trying to mask his nerves with bravado. What kind of expectations? Greg had seated himself at the counter, leaning forward with his elbows resting on the polished wood, his demeanor radiating a mix of authority and anticipation. Your next menu. It needs to reflect growth, not just in your cooking but in your ability to balance this new embodiment of yourself, chef, father, everything you've been talking about. You're no longer solely operating in the realm of culinary delights, you're weaving in the essence of experience, emotion, and a touch of vulnerability. Jake's mind raced. He had solely focused on technical perfection, executing dishes with precision, believing that was enough. But Greg's words struck home, igniting a flicker of introspection. Balancing flavors was one thing, balancing the chaos of life was another, challenge of a completely different magnitude. Could he truly mix his roles into this new menu in a way that was authentic? Is that what you want to see on the menu? Emotion? Jake probed, feeling a sense of desperation intertwine with the challenge. How do I even do that? Greg's eyebrows lifted, his interest piqued. Exactly. How do you infuse your dishes with who you are? Bring in what you've learned from being a dad. If you can create something that encapsulates those lessons, I may be impressed. Jake pondered the implications. He wasn't merely a chef anymore, he was a father learning to navigate new joys and challenges. Cooking had always been a way for him to express himself, a craft where he could pour his soul into each plate. But now, his perspectives had shifted. The chaos he tackled daily had begun transforming his cooking style. The more personal he could make that connection, the more resonant the dishes would become. What if I fail? He mumbled, half hoping Greg would dismiss his insecurity. What if my personal touch lands flat? What if it doesn't resonate with anyone? Then you fail, Greg responded honestly, without the disdain Jake had expected. But you also have the opportunity to learn. That, Jake, is growth. Failure doesn't mean you're less of a chef or a father, it means you're truly living and pushing boundaries. What you risk is what you will gain. A heavy silence settled over them, the diner's clatter fading into a background hum. In that moment, Jake felt a dawning realization that echoed through him: embracing his vulnerability could yield the most honest and powerful results. Each dish could be a storytelling vessel, merging his life experiences with culinary artistry. All right, Jake finally said, his voice steadier, filled with purpose. I'll take you up on that. I'll create a menu that reflects every part of me, including the chaos. Greg nodded, finally showing a hint of approval as he leaned back against the counter. Good. I'll hold you to it. Now, let us talk about some themes. As they began sketching ideas, Jake felt a burst of inspiration rising within him like dough ready to rise. He envisioned dishes not just as meals, but as narrative stories of sleepless nights, of joyful laughter, of crossing the threshold into fatherhood, and the blending of those realities into each component of his cooking. But while a new flame lit within him, shadows of doubt still loomed. How would the world receive this risky plunge? What if the recipes didn't translate the complexities he intended to share? Just as Jake was about to voice his latest idea, the bell over the diner's entrance rang out. He turned to see a familiar figure step inside, the local food blogger, known for her sharp critiques and passionate following. The stakes had just risen significantly, and under the weight of expectation, Jake's breath quickened. Would he be able to pour his heart into the new menu while facing yet another trial? Could this moment solidify his path toward both personal and professional growth, or would it further amplify his insecurities? As Jake organized his thoughts, an unexpected clarity began to emerge. This was his chance to truly embody the roles he had been striving to reconcile. "Let us go," he said, pressing forward and asserting a newfound determination. "I'm ready for the challenge." And with the looming presence of the food blogger, he was poised not only for a culinary transformation but a deeper exploration into the heart of who he was becoming. Would he emerge triumphant or be overwhelmed by the pressures ahead? Jake's palms felt clammy as he wiped them on his apron, the weight of his decision settling heavily on his chest. The food blogger, known for her piercing insights and vast following, had the power to either amplify his voice or cast a shadow over his newfound ambition. The diner, usually a safe haven, now felt like a stage under scrutiny. "Focus," he murmured to himself, taking a deep breath to steady his racing heart. The diner's ambience buzzed around him, but his thoughts zeroed in on the task at hand. What would he create that could encapsulate his journey as both a chef and a father? He considered the flavors that had intertwined in his life's sweetness, reflecting the laughter shared at home, bitterness reminding him of sleepless nights, and a touch of acid evoking the tension of raising a child. Each dish he envisioned began to take form, layered with emotional context rather than simply culinary technique. "Okay, Jake. You're more than a chef, you're a storyteller," he reminded himself as he sharpened his knives. He needed to translate this new philosophy into something tangible. The menu had to be a gallery displaying his evolution, infused with the essence of life's unpredictability. He took a moment to gather his inspiration, a savory dish featuring braised short ribs, tender and rich, enveloped in a sauce that mirrored the flavors of his childhood. This would resonate with the nostalgia of family dinners. Next to it, a playful dessert chocolate lava cake with a crunchy exterior, representing the tough challenges he faced as a single dad, only to give way to a molten center that symbolized love and joy. As he prepared, a lingering anxiety crept into his mind. What if the food blogger saw through his attempts? What if she deemed his personal touch as indulgent or self-serving? Doubts clawed at him, whispering of the possibility of failure. But then, Greg's voice echoed in his heart, "What you risk is what you will gain." Deciding to embrace the uncertainty, he threw himself into the cooking process, every stir and every slice becoming cathartic. The smell of garlic sautéing in olive oil drew him into the present moment, creating a sense of calm that momentarily drowned out his fears. He harmonized elements, balancing flavors that felt like little expressions of his life. Just as he began plating the short ribs, the door swung open again, and he saw the food blogger moving toward the counter, her keen eyes scanning every corner of the diner. She settled into her seat, laptop open, fingers poised to capture every detail. Jake's stomach twisted, not just with nerves, but with an eagerness to unveil the raw essence of his work. This was bigger than just feeding people, it was about sharing his story, risking vulnerability with each dish. With each plate he set down in front of her, he felt a sense of liberation. He explained the dishes, the short ribs representing childhood warmth, the dessert echoing the complexity of fatherhood. His narration became more than rehearsed lines, it became a personal confession, layered with sentiments he had once kept bottled inside. "Each bite carries a story," he concluded, his voice unexpectedly confident. "It's who I am now." The blogger's eyes flickered with interest, a spark of curiosity igniting as she tasted. This was the moment of truth he hadn't realized he had been searching for. And with every forkful she took, he watched for her expression, desperate to uncover whether she connected with the heart he had poured into his creations or if he stood on the edge of public humiliation. Jake understood too well that this moment could neither define his journey nor his worth, but it held the weight of an opportune reckoning. As she nodded, a tentative smile emerging, he allowed himself a sliver of hope. Perhaps this was not just an evaluative moment, but the start of a transformative chapter, the potential for his culinary voice to resonate beyond those diner walls. But before he could relish in the thought, a flash of disappointment crossed her face. "I feel like there's something missing." She hesitated, her voice softer now, urging him to delve deeper. Jake's pulse quickened at her assertion, a challenge dangling before him. What else could he unlock in himself, in his dishes? What hidden layers remained to be explored? With the stakes heightened, he contemplated not only what he had prepared but also what he still had to learn about cooking, connection, and himself. Jake stood in the middle of the diner, surrounded by the fading echoes of laughter and the lingering scent of spice from his bending kitchen. The weight of the evening's challenges pressed heavily on him, yet there was a lightness in his heart that he had never felt before. At that moment, he had not just completed a meal, he had orchestrated a culinary symphony infused with the melodies of his life as a father. The chicken soup for Lily, now a crowd favorite, had become the embodiment of love, a dish crafted not only for sustenance but as a vessel carrying the bond between generations. As patrons left, sidling an extra $1 for the lifetime recipe, their satisfaction felt like a silent affirmation of his growth. "Bring me a menu that tells a story," Greg had declared, and with each dish Jake created, he did just that. The braised short rib synonymized warmth from cozy family dinners, while the chocolate lava cake symbolized his resilience, forging joy amidst the trials of parenthood. His path had not been without hardships, and looking back on the tumultuous night, Jake understood his evolution. The internal conflict he once succumbed to balancing ambitions with parental duties had sharpened his focus. He had realized that success wasn't confined to the meticulous execution of a dish, it was about embodying purpose. Cooking had always been an art of precision, but now it was an extension of his heart. Lily's laughter echoed sweetly in his thoughts as he recalled tossing cupcakes adorned with sprinkles in front of the teary toddler. That was the true essence of preparation, turning chaos into connection. It was a lesson he would carry with him, that vulnerability could pave the way for profound strength. Now the food blogger's keen eyes had seen them, and the weight of her expectation had drawn out not just a chef, but a storyteller. As she reminisced about childhood favorites and flavors, he had bared his soul, understanding that the value of his food extended beyond taste, it was nourishment for the spirit. "Maybe there's something missing," she had said, her voice calling him to dig deeper. That realization struck a chord within him. What he had initially perceived as criticism unveiled a new opportunity, an invitation to explore the human experience reflected in cuisine. The complexity of parenting, of nurturing, and of creating hadn't just emerged in the meals he served, but now burned brightly in Brad's resolve to share every facet of his story beyond the diner. As he reflected, an invigorating sense of clarity dawned on him. He was not just conveying a narrative through ingredients, he was personifying a lifestyle, one that signified growth, love, and most importantly, acceptance of one's own imperfections. "Hey Jake," Annie called out, jolting him from his reverie. "That food blogger posted. You've got a flood of comments." A rush of excitement surged through him, yet he quelled it, recognizing what lay within that flood. Genuine appreciation comments highlighting the authentic connection he had established with his culinary creations, and recognizing his journey as a single father through his dishes. Each compliment was a testament to his progress, not only as a chef but as someone embracing vulnerability. He ebbed and flowed through the din, taking in the tangible affirmations of those around him, his regulars, fellow staff, and the community that had become family. Surrounded by those who had witnessed his transformation, he drew strength from their acknowledgement, buoyed by the knowledge that he had inched closer to his aspirations. Resolved, he huddled around his team, sharing visions for a menu that would encompass every element of his life in each installment. "Let us create a tasting menu," he proposed with firm conviction, aiming higher than he ever imagined, each course representing a part of my journey as both a chef and father. It'll be a tribute, a celebration of love, flavors, and stories. Determined and empowered, Jake stepped into a future he had carved for himself. At that moment, he achieved not just a culinary milestone, but a pivotal personal victory, He had transformed from a struggling chef and unsure father into a man of solid confidence and recognized competence. He proved to himself that parenting and artistry could coexist harmoniously. As the diner bustled with renewed energy, Jake unrealized the true measure of his journey. It was not an endpoint but a continuum of growth, laden with challenges and victories alike. This was his transformation. Nothing was missing from his menu anymore. He had become the chef who would not only embrace vulnerability but would use it to forge real connections, creating a legacy for his daughter, one that would flourish for generations to follow. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.